I told her it didn't include a map either. I usually like to see maps and conditions that are mapped. Exactly what I'm talking about.
You really want to make your life real miserable, don't you? The two boys are wondering who to start.
In that minutes of
It's your month.
for what?
Go first.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. City of North Kansas City, Missouri, regular council meeting and motion to close part of the meeting, May 7th, 2019. Can we have a moment of silence? Councilman DeLore? Okay, comments from the public? Well, hearing none, moving on. Consent agenda,
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 12.
Property tax collections contract with Clay County and city participation in Missouri Clean Energy District PACE program.
Mr. Eric.
Thanks, sir. As you'll recall, at your previous meeting, April 16th, you had on your agenda an item to rescind the Missouri Clean Energy District PACE ordinance we joined in 2013. There was a representative from the PACE district here that night who did ask the council to defer taking that action in order to give the Clay County collector and the Missouri Clean Energy District an opportunity to try to resolve their differences. Subsequent to that meeting, I did receive a communication from the Clay County collector, Lydia McAvoy, who asked for the opportunity to appear before the council tonight to express her concerns about the MCED PACE program. Still does remain my recommendation to the council that we do rescind our participation in that particular program. So at this point, I would ask Ms. McAvoy to come forward and make any comments that she'd like to make and begin a discussion between you.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I really just want to answer your questions tonight, and when I watched the replay of the meeting from last time, I just feel like if you can ask the questions directly to me, that maybe I can help you understand where I'm coming from on this. The only thing I would do by way of introduction before I would answer questions is just kind of let you know the history of what's happened in my office with this program. We've collected for the first time in 2017. We had 7 liens that year to collect in all of Clay County. And out of those 7 liens, we had 2 that were very problematic and cost us probably about 4 to 5 hours total in additional customer service time, which is a lot for 7 liens, but manageable. And we figured it was probably growing pains, first year and that kind of thing. In 18, we had about 110 to 115, I forget the exact number, liens. And we have probably spent about 50 to 60 outside hours above and beyond just the technical details of collecting in conversations with the taxpayers themselves, with title companies, with mortgage companies, with attorneys, not ours, with attorneys of the taxpayers, trying to resolve issues that have arisen from those liens. And so that was really what pushed me to be very concerned about the overall burden that this could create on my office. There are already several hundred on file. I won't know until I'm given the pile in October, but there are already several hundred on file, and it's estimated we could be as high as 1,000 this year. And so it wasn't just growing pains. The types of concerns that arise are somewhat inherent in the type of lien that it is. And therefore, I don't necessarily see the customer service burden going down. And with that number of liens, I anticipate it just being overwhelming. And so this was an unfortunate remedy to try to stem the tide. I value my relationship with the city of North Kansas City very much and all the cities in Clay County. But in a way, and this is not meant to be derogatory towards you because I know this was not your intention, but in a way, the acceptance of the PACE program into North Kansas City really fundamentally changed the relationship that we had established and the level of quote-unquote burden that North Kansas City was on my office. And you didn't mean it that way, I didn't see it that way, nobody saw this coming, so that's not meant to be in any way negative, but it's just a fact that has happened. And so this was the remedy that I could think of. And I know there was also some questions last time about Kansas City, because they met with me right away when I first talked to them about this. It would cost them over $1 million to restart up their collections, and so I did give them a year. And I want to be fair to all of my cities. I always have tried to be fair. Kansas City is always the 800-pound gorilla, but I try to treat all the cities as fairly as possible. And I assure you that they are the majority of the 1,000 liens, and it will not continue. Something will have to come to an end with Kansas City as well. It's just a bit more of a negotiation because of the magnitude of the problem. But I am not favoring them necessarily. They were the first to come meet with me and met with me in a very proactive and helpful way. So just so you know, so that I'm trying to treat everyone as fairly as I can in the situation. There's also another reason why I gave as early notice as possible, because I don't want it to be a burden. So I'm open to questions.
A couple of quick questions. I think staff had told us the last time that we have, 3 liens here in North Kansas City? Is that correct?
Yes, sir, according to the most recent records that we have.
And I understand that Kansas City is a major, player in that. I mean, I'm not sure, my question is one of the questions, I have a couple here, is 3 liens in North Kansas City, how much extra burden does that create for your office? And I understand that you may be under budget constraints. I'm not sure, without going into all what's going on in Clay County, if your budget's been cut or what have you, but 3 liens as far as North Kansas City, what kind of man hours are you looking for that?
I agree, and that's a fair question. And I do definitely want to separate this completely from any negative situations that might be going on in Clay County.
Right. Yeah,
My
we don't
office
need
is
to get
fine.
into that. Yeah,
So let's.
Okay.
But I think, again, it's just to try to be fair to everyone. Simply because you only have 3 liens this year, you never know when those liens will arise. And to be perfectly honest, when I say the 50 to 60 hours, it's interesting. Those have come from about a dozen of the liens. You never know where the problematic liens are going to come from. The very first year, the one that cost us almost all of the time, was a single lien that cost us the hours of time, because it depends on the situation that's facing the homeowner. It depends on what was disclosed to them. It depends on, their financing situation. And so I do hear what you're saying, and that is a fair question and definitely something for you guys to take into consideration as well. But I'm trying to be fair to everyone in that it is this program that's causing the issue, and you never know where those problems are going to arise. Even a single lien can cost several hours.
And they must have not anticipated this extra work when they set it up, did they not set it up correctly? I guess we don't know if they set it up correctly, but it's created this extra work that they didn't anticipate. So I can understand your position as well. So.
Yeah. I personal thoughts on that, but I don't know what thought process went into it. I just, there's a lot of concern on the part of, here's one thing I think that maybe people didn't understand is the taxpayers insist on coming to me and to my office. There's an 800 number, there's customer service offered by the PACE providers. We've listened in on some of those calls. They weren't that helpful, but setting that aside, it doesn't matter. People voted for me. People, and they expect if something is on their tax bill, they have a God-given right to come and yell at me about it, and they do, and I honor that. But there's nothing I can do in these situations, although that is what we've tried to help with the phone calls with the mortgage companies and the phone calls with the title companies, is to get these things straightened out because they feel like they have nowhere else to go, and because we're that face that's on that tax bill. And I think maybe that isn't what was anticipated so much.
Well, thank you for coming tonight to speak with us.
Brian?
So are you continuing to work with the energy or the district to resolve some of those concerns?
I have tried.
Or compensation, at least for additional time?
Oh, compensation has not
That is
been
has
offered,
not,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So, and I suppose that would make a difference. A lot of, so, you guys pay a 1% as well when I collect. And by contract, a very small part of that comes into a fund that I can use in my office, but by law, it goes to the commission. It does not come to my office. So, and there is no contract with the MCED. So just so you guys know, because they do always say, well, we pay that 1%. Well, that doesn't come to my office. And my office is funded fine. Collectors have a very good statutory position in the state of Missouri. I'm fine. It's just I'm looking at this particular year, one of my senior staff ended up having to set aside another project she was working on specifically because, and I saw that and I'm afraid of it being 10 times that or 100 times that in years to come. Because it does have to be senior staff that deals with these situations as well. I don't have my cashiers sitting down with title companies and trying to figure out what's owed and giving payoff notices. That's the other thing, to answer you, Mr. Clevenger. The mortgage companies and the title companies insist on a letter from me, not from the Missouri Clean Energy District, that this lien, like if a lien has been paid off, they want verification from me. I'm the one that sells people's homes out from underneath them. And so they want verification from me, and I don't have verification. And so that's why we end up having to be on the phone, with the title company and with them to try to figure it out, because they don't want a letter. They're like, I don't know who the Missouri Clean Energy District, but it's just like, they don't come to you guys for a letter saying North Kansas City's going to lower their taxes or raise their taxes. They want a letter from me saying that the taxes are paid or that there's no outstanding obligation or whatever, so.
Or more on that. So you are absolutely not willing to extend us one more year, similar to Kansas City, under the current condition?
I could consider it. I don't want to, so Gladstone is already rescinded. They went ahead and rescinded. And I want to try to be as fair to people as possible. If there's any chance that you guys would consider rescinding, I'd rather just go down that road. And what I have talked with Mr. Berlin about, and I want to keep talking about this. There's some legislation pending that may change this whole conversation anyway. It's not going to pass this year, but it may pass next year. And maybe there are some things that can be done to think outside the box so that the program could be brought back in. Plus I do continue to try to talk to the Missouri Clean Energy District. But maybe there will be some outside forces that force the type of compliance that would make this situation less. And if that ever happens, then we could continue to discuss it, so.
Certainly don't want this to be the end of the dialogue, because I think you guys have done some great stuff on collecting, and collecting is easy through Clay County, and
Right,
certainly had
and
that.
it is. And you guys have been great partners. That's what's tough about this, is my cities have always been very easy to work with. And so now I've got your citizens upset with me over something that's on the bill, and it's not your North Kansas City line item, it's something else, but it did come in through city government, so that's the issue.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. To Mr. Clevenger's point, with 3 in the city, it doesn't seem like a big issue, but we went from 7 to over 100 to now nearly 1,000. And it could look the same way here. So to keep it in perspective, what's actually happening here is kind of troubling to me. I've talked with Ms. McAvoy. I've talked with some people from the Missouri Bankers Association. This is a larger issue than even what's going on in North Kansas City, Gladstone, and the cities in Clay County. Liens are being put on people's homes that supersede their mortgage, and bankers are very concerned with this because there's not underwriting that's being done. There are no standards that people are being held to as contractors. So somebody can come up and knock on a homeowner's door and offer them a large solar panel installation financed through their tax bill that goes ahead of their mortgage. So, people aren't being underwritten. There's no income verification. There's not interest rate standards that are being held, and I come from a background of federal bank regulation where this created the 2008 mortgage crisis. At that point, if they sold a house with the mortgage, it went away. Tax bills don't go away. So these are now actually becoming toxic assets. So in my opinion, with what's going on with this program, it was well intended, and it started out, I'm sure it started out fine, but what's happened is it's sort of snowballed from there, and until regulations are passed, like what's pending in the Missouri House and Senate, I think we have to get out of it. I think we need to rescind it and then see what comes of the regulation to restart the discussion. On top of that, you know, the partnership we have with Clay County for tax collection is important. We don't want to collect our own taxes, nor are we really equipped to do so. It seems like a pretty good idea to just go ahead and rescind. That's my stance.
I want to make sure that we keep, you know, personal feelings about it on my part separate, because state law here's the other thing is state law absolutely requires me to collect these liens, separate and apart from whether I have a contract with you guys or not. So that is part of the issue too. If I could just say, here, you collect your own liens, then that'd be fine, but I can't. And so I appreciate you doing the research. I would encourage all of you to do it. There are a lot of stories. A lot of other states are handling it differently. Missouri is starting to look at it differently, but I do want to keep my personal concerns separate on that and just keep it focused on the burden, the time burden on the office.
Just one question. How are other counties dealing with it? So we can't be the only one.
No, and I want to make sure that I don't say anything that's factually inaccurate. I know that the collector in, was it Boone, got them to rescind. I know Leah Betts in Greene County is fighting the same kind of a situation with just overwhelming. They have a huge number as well in that county. It's mostly the bigger counties where there is enough value in the properties to be attractive to this type of lien. To put it mildly, the collectors of Missouri are united against this program, but I really do want to keep that separate from here. But the reason is because of what's happening. We don't like the program, but it's not about that tonight. But that is what's causing the customer service concerns as well. The things that we don't like about it are true, and they are happening. The fact that it's creating super liens, the fact that it's creating liens on homes that people don't know, don't understand the value, what the lien really means. And then they're surprised when they get their tax bill and that kind of a thing. We are facing specifically in Clay County a severe situation with non-English speakers, and the entire contract is in English, all communication is in English. And then they come to our office, and there's no way they speak enough English to understand what happened. And I've been told that that's a little bit unique. They don't have as many non-English speakers, I guess, in St. Charles County and on the east side of the state as we do here in Clay. So, I mean, there's several issues like that. I just want to be very careful. You know, I have butted heads often with the Missouri Clean Energy District. I do have a legal obligation to collect, and I don't want to sit here and just talk about and disparage them any more than just the objective burden on my office. But I would urge you to do your research.
Well, is there any alternative?
Well, Ms. McVoy is, has given us the choice
Yeah.
of continuing in with the Missouri Clean Energy District pace or entering. We think our contract expires this year, so we've talked, and Ms. McVoy's indicated she'd be willing to enter into a new contract under essentially the same terms as the old one, which was 4 years with the possibility of an additional 4 at a fee of 1%. And if you do rescind, we would like to bring that to you as soon as possible. So no, I don't really think there is a good choice. I mean, I think the council indicated consensus that we did want to continue with the current relationship with the Clay County Collector in terms of performing our collections, and that being the case, then I think the choice before you is relatively clear cut.
If they keep doing this, somebody's got to collect it or something. I mean, are they going to stop it? Or?
Well, we did collect our taxes back before we entered into this contract, and that would be the alternative, but it's not, in staff's opinion, a very good alternative. As we discussed before, there were a lot of pitfalls to the previous system when we did it ourselves. We do consider this a far superior system.
If I could, commercial PACE is collected like a regular debt. It's collected like with a debt collector, or like, they collect it themselves, basically, the Clean Energy District does. So that's an option that they would have had available to them. And then the legislation that looks like it's not going to pass this year, but it basically says that if a city is within a county where the county has not elected to participate, that the city would collect just those liens themselves.
Oh.
So that's an option. Unfortunately, I don't think it's an option I could offer right now. I would offer that. You guys can collect your 3 liens, and I'll keep collecting the rest of your stuff, and we'd be fine. But right now, the law says I shall collect it, so I don't know that that's lawful right now. And I don't want to mess with the Missouri Clean Energy District, because I want to
Right.
follow my legal obligations.
Just another quick question. So the 3 that we've got now, are they grandfathered in, or does that just stop if we rescind?
Oh, no, as far as I understand it, I would be collecting those liens forever, which is, by the way, is another point about the 7 and then the 115 and then the
Right, it's
1,000.
just
It's
fixed.
cumulative.
Right, it could grow and grow.
Cumulative,
I'm-
right.
I'm all in favor of I don't like how it's played out, but I'm all in favor of continuing our relationship as well. And if we need to rescind, then I'm okay with that as well.
And I would represent to you right now that if in the future you guys want to revisit this exact topic, I would always be more than willing to talk to you about, in other words, if you want to get back into PACE, but you still want to have a relationship with me, and maybe the law has changed or there's been some protections, I want to continue that conversation, so I appreciate it.
If I could add a couple of remarks. Yes, sir, did you have a question?
Oh, are we in the position to rescind it right now?
No,
or-
sir. No, we would need to bring an
Yeah.
ordinance to you at your next meeting. Couple of things. First of all, the gentleman from the Missouri Clean Energy District, PACE, that was here last time, also suggested to you that perhaps the city could withdraw only from the residential portion and leave the commercial in place in order to give companies an opportunity. If you wanted to do that, I think the city councilor and I would recommend to you a clean break at your next meeting, but then we could look at it. But there is another opportunity for commercial ventures to use the PACE program if they like, because the city is in the Show Me PACE district. We joined that in 2017. It's a different PACE district. They use third-party collections, and Ms. McAvoy's indicated she doesn't have an issue with any third-party collection. So that is, an opportunity. It is a venue that companies that wanted to use the PACE program could use, even if we would draw completely from the Missouri Clean Energy District. But my intention, assuming I think I'm hearing consensus, is to bring that to you for formal consideration at your next meeting, and also bring you a new contract with Clay County Collector at your next meeting, or as soon as possible after your next meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, give me a call tomorrow and we'll talk about that. So,
Okay.
there's no other, yes, sir, we're not looking for a vote tonight, so.
Okay, number 15.
McClure Engineering Presentation, Armor Walker Intersection Improvements.
Eric.
Thanks, sir. I'll call on Community Development Director Sarah Copeland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last December, you approved a task order with McClure Engineering to complete a traffic study on the intersection of Walker Road and Walker Road, or Highway 210 and Walker Road. Currently, the eastbound traffic that is turning left onto Walker backs up past the left turn lanes at peak times. And we also see southbound traffic on Walker stacking past the intersection with Clay Edwards Drive. This was flagged as an issue when we were doing the traffic studies related to the Armor Road redevelopment area. And so we had McClure do a traffic study looking at that intersection, and they're here to present to you the findings from that traffic impact study. We have Jay Burris and Ryan Davis from McClure here, and I will let them come up to the podium and kind of give you the overview of what they found and the recommendations for moving forward.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. Thank you all for having us here. And we're going to kind of tag team this real quickly. My name is Jay Burris. I'm the project manager for McClure. I will be, depending on your decisions going forward, the project manager for actual design of any improvements that are suggested. And very quickly, I'll introduce my colleague, but I just wanted to thank you all from McClure. McClure may not be a name that is completely familiar with you. We just celebrated, technically Sunday, changing over. We were, McClure acquired Schaefer Klein and Warren, so for the last year we've been McClure. Before that, for the last about 130 years before that, we were Schaefer Klein and Warren. We have an office here at 17th and Swift. And with that, this was always envisioned as kind of a two-part project. The first part is to actually look at the problem out at Walker and Armour, and one little twist to it is obviously 210 is a Missouri MoDOT road, so anything we did had to get their blessing. So with that, like I said, I'm more of a hard design guy. I'm going to introduce my colleague Ryan Davis, who is more on the traffic side, and he was actually the perpetrator of this study. So with that, I'd like to introduce him. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, thank you. Thank you, Jay. Again, my name's Ryan Davis. I'm with McClure. Full-fledged, I am from the original McClure up in Clive, Iowa, and been down here quite a bit helping Jay with the Kansas City market. Anyways, so we were asked to come look at this intersection as Sarah kind of implemented. There's been backups in morning peak and the PM peak, both with the eastbound left turn lane in the morning and then the southbound right turn lane in the afternoon. Right here, just a little quick diagram for you. We set up 3 and 4 different cameras to really capture and have video evidence as to what's actually going on out there. We collected January 9th of this year. The quick little diagram that you can see there, the intersection sees just under 38,000 vehicles a day, which is a pretty good number, but it's, you know, Armour is a pretty east-west large connector for the metro here. So one thing I wanted to really point out on the top line there, so in the morning, the EBL, that's the eastbound left, that's 692. That's over the federal highways number for a recommended 3-lane left turn lane. So what you're dealing out there at that intersection, that's really large numbers, and federal highway really recommends 3 lanes. But when we really took a deeper look into this intersection with an alternative solution, which we'll go over here in a little bit. Numbers really don't show well on this one, but this is just the AM peak turning movements and the PM peak turning movements to show you, you know, where the traffic's coming from in the morning and where the traffic's coming from in the afternoon. And when you really take a look at conflicting movements, the morning, the eastbound left turn lane, again, which is the number that the 692, is straight in conflict with the westbound through movement, which is a very large number too. So those are 2 movements that are really vying for the green time at that signal, which is why you see a lot of the backup at that intersection. So when we first took a look at this intersection, we preliminarily concepted an idea to eliminate the 3rd westbound through lane. That would allow us to make the southbound right a free movement to really push that traffic in the PM peak, to really open up the intersection in front of the hospital. One of the main concerns was a safety issue, getting people in and out of the hospital. So that was one of our main concerns when we very first took a look at what we could do, even before diving into the numbers. After taking a look at the numbers, we really just couldn't get rid of that 3rd lane on the westbound through. So what we did was to keep that 3rd westbound through lane, and then change the middle lane on the southbound Walker Road to, you can either make a left or a right. From our past dealings with MoDOT, we are recommending keeping the island that's on Walker Road there. Any lane for pedestrian crossing, more than 3 lanes, MoDOT really likes to see refuge islands. And so with 4 lanes being there, we've decided to keep the island that's right there. So it's going to be a little different for the driver's perspective, being able to use that middle lane to turn either both left or right. We're recommending a stop bar there for them to come to a complete stop. It is going to be still signalized, but we will provide what's called chicken scratch paint markings for them to go into into the correct lane when they make that right-hand movement. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt on
Yep,
that
go
one.
ahead.
I spent a lot of time up in Liberty near the Chick-fil-A 152 intersection. There's a similar spot where you can go left or right.
Yep.
All it takes is one person going left to gridlock it.
And we modeled that.
Okay.
So the southbound left-hand movement in the afternoon is about 1/3 of what the right-hand movement is. And just from driver's perspective, them getting used to the intersection, we truly believe that people wanting to make the left-hand movement and the PM will get in that left-hand lane. But we did model it several times to see what happens if somebody wants to turn left in that middle lane. Go ahead. So again, just raw numbers here to present to you. The main thing that I really wanted to point out was the queuing length reduction, which is the very bottom two. So on the left-hand side, you have the existing conditions, which is what we saw in videos. And then on the right-hand side is what we're proposing. It's what we've modeled. When we model traffic and intersections like this, we run it through a micro simulation program. We like to run it 10 times and take the average of that. So you're not just getting one simulation, you're getting multiple simulations all converged into one. So the main point there is that that eastbound left AM reduction is a huge reduction. Gets people out of the through movement on the eastbound through. They can actually store in the queue distance that we're proposing. So I just want to quickly end with a couple of videos to show you what's actually going on out there. So one thing I really didn't touch upon was the lane utilization or imbalance out there. 75% of the people making that left-hand turn in the morning actually go to Cerner. So right now, the way the lanes are configured, the innermost or the left-hand left turn lane, if you can follow me on that one, is a trap lane directly into the hospital. So with our proposal, we're shifting that leftmost left turn lane to actually go into the center lane on Walker Road northbound. So with this video, you'll see that actually during this little 25-second clip, there's 26 total vehicles, 24 of which are in the right-hand lane, and that's where we see that imbalance. Not going to play for us tonight? Oh, it's playing? Oh, there she goes. I was looking at the TV. Yeah, so this was very typical on our videos. If you guys want to see more, I can provide those to you. We have hours and hours and hours worth of video to watch, which is my life as a traffic engineer. You can go on to the next slide. It'll just, it's on auto. Just go to the next. Doesn't want to go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so this is just a video. So this is our 4th camera along Armour Road here, which was actually 700 feet west of the intersection. We knew that there were some long queues, but as you can see, the camera is 700 feet west, and the queue is actually proceeding further west of that camera. So just more evidence of lane imbalance and why we need to balance those lanes and actually extend the turn lane just a little bit. So the last video we have is again just representation of how many people making that northbound or the eastbound left movement onto Walker Road actually turn into Cerner versus the Kansas City Hospital. And with that, I am glad to take any questions. This was a great study. It was quick and dirty, and one thing that we actually proposed is really short and sweet. We've sent the report off to MoDOT, and as Jay said, they've come back and said that they approve of our changes. Yes, sir.
Great job presentation-wise, and the numbers are very interesting to see. Two questions. That same left-right turn spot in the afternoon, it makes a ton of sense. You say 295 going left, most everybody else going right. Is there a way to make it a hard, like, right turn in the afternoon, left turn otherwise? Like, put a sign up above that only allows a right turn at that point?
We can. We'd have to submit another request through MoDOT to see if they would accept that. It's hard to govern. What it takes is what we call a blackout box. So a mechanical sign, illuminated sign can actually show the dual in the morning,
Right.
and then the hard right in the afternoon. But then again, it's just public engagement too, reaching out to Cerner, reaching out to the hospital. But again, stuff like that, it's possible. It's kind of hard to govern though.
Second piece, that right turn heading southbound on Walker, turning right onto 210. You had talked about putting the barrier and making that a dedicated lane to move in. Is there a way to extend the access so that there's a merge? Because there's a lot of large trucks coming down 210, coming out of the hospital. Even if it's flowing freely, you got to stop and watch for those trucks coming in.
That was one thing that we considered, yes. Right away is a big concern there. It wasn't any indication when we previously met with staff before the study that they wanted to purchase any right away. That's one option that you can do, but I can tell you real quick that you get into that ditch channel and then you open up a can of worms. You could possibly be dealing with the core with the proximity to the river. You're dealing with the alterations of the box culvert underneath that intersection. So you're opening up a really large can of worms by doing that.
Yeah, don't want to open that. And I see a bike lane there too. We don't want to run that over. So, yeah, my thoughts.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Well, I think you did a very good study and appreciate it. I myself, I was down there on 3 occasions, twice in the evening and once in the morning, and watched the traffic. What I found is that the real bad backup is more significant, much more significant at Armour and Vernon than it is at Armour and Walker.
In the morning or the evening, sorry?
Well, at one of 3 times, either morning, lunchtime, and evening during the weekdays. And that traffic, it really backs up that you have that left turn lane from Armour Road to go north on Vernon, and the cars back up. They're stopped. They're wanting to turn, and they're not in the turn lanes any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in a through lane. That's the real problem that I see, much more significant at Armour and Vernon than I do see here. I mean, not that there's not an issue at Armour and Walker. I can see the issue, but a much greater issue at Armour and Vernon.
Well, that intersection was out of our scope of study, so we didn't really go down to Vernon.
I understand that.
Leave it up to staff.
I just
on that
wonder
one.
if this would have any impact on that, and I don't know whether that it would.
If anything, the impact of that intersection would benefit, the improvements at this intersection would benefit the Vernon intersection because it would reduce the queue backing up to that intersection possible.
I'm surprised we don't have a number of rear-end collisions on Armour Road at Vernon. And on the financing, on any changes we make, it's all going to be by the city. The state's not going to help on this, are they?
No, it would all be done by the city. And just to piggyback on Ryan's comments, their recommendations are on page 13 of the traffic study. As you said, MoDOT has approved this and given us authorization to move forward on detailed design. But that would require us to, as Jay said, this is a two-step project. We would need to take step 2 and enter into a contract with them to do that design. We have budgeted for this project in this year's budget. We believe, based on the traffic study, because there's not a lot of new pavement being proposed, that, this would be within our budgeted amount for this year. But yes, it would be a cost borne by the city, and MoDOT would not be making a contribution to it.
We had $337,552 budgeted for this project. To date, we spent 12 on this study. So as Sarah indicates, that our hope is that we would spend a lot less than budgeted, but the next step, if you direct us, would be to bring you a design contract.
I had written down $357,000. I can see, though, that the greater need probably is at Armour and Vernon.
Do we look at the potential for the One North development and the impact of the traffic with that going in? I mean, it's still very preliminary, but it's right there at that same.
We did a totally separate traffic study with One North before we did design for the improvements there that was also reviewed and approved by MoDOT.
Okay.
So one of the findings of that earlier traffic study was that improvements were needed at this intersection. So this is really a follow-up to that.
And we were supplied that document and used the numbers projected in that study onto ours.
Very good.
I'm okay moving forward. I think it's a problem. I agree that Vernon can be a problem as well, so I'd like to see how this works out. And then we can, maybe in the future, if we need to, depending on the development in One North, look at Vernon. And I guess on the, would you call it the blackout or the black box?
The blackout sign, yeah.
Blackout sign, yeah,
Mhm.
that was, I like that idea for the future. Maybe we can look at that if we need it, and go back to MoDOT at that point, since we've already gotten that approval. So those are my 2 cents.
Mr. Stefan was correct, it's 357.
He's good with numbers, Councilmember Stefan.
Should we move ahead, or do we need to, what do you need?
Is there consensus for us to bring you a design contract to continue to the next stage? I'm seeing nods.
Yes.
All right, we'll do that then. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Okay. Number 14.
Application for conditional use permit, shared parking arrangement, proposed medical marijuana facility at 1520 Swift. Bill number 7399, ordinance number 9196.
Eric?
Thanks, sir. I'll call on Ms. Copeland.
Good evening again. So the application before you tonight for this conditional use permit concerns the building at 1520 Swift, which is on the west side of Swift between 14th and 16th Avenues, and the lot at the southwest corner of 15th and Erie. To the best of our knowledge, the building at 1520 Swift was constructed before the city adopted its first zoning ordinance in 1940, which makes this building a legal, non-conforming site. It does not conform with the current standards that we have in place for providing on-site parking. But it's legal for this building to continue to be used to house businesses in North Kansas City. It just does so under the section of our zoning ordinance that deals with legal, non-conforming sites. The owner of the property intends to submit an application to the state for a license to cultivate, manufacture, and sell medical marijuana on the property. A majority of the medical marijuana uses are considered industrial, and the building is currently used for industrial uses, and so under the non-conforming section of the zoning ordinance, they could do that without providing on-site parking. But they also intend to use a portion of the building for retail uses and a portion of the building for office, and that change of use means that they have to comply for those portions of the building with the current standards of the zoning ordinance. And that's what triggered this application for a shared parking arrangement. So this application really is just about the parking. It's not about the use of the building. So they have proposed setting up a shared parking arrangement with the property at 15th and Erie, which is something that we do pretty regularly through the conditional use permit process. This is a public hearing, and so we did advertise the public hearing in the Kansas City Star by posting signs and mailing notices to property owners within 185 feet. The Planning Commission held the required public hearing last Thursday, and we had one person who came and spoke positively about the application. Staff is proposing 6 conditions on the approval of this conditional use permit. Numbers 5 and 6 on the list in the ordinance are our typical conditional use permit conditions. 1 through 4 are the conditions that the parking spaces be constructed, striped, and maintained as shown in the submitted site plan, that the final site plan for the parking lot be submitted to community development for approval. What's shown in the conditional use permit application is a conceptual sketch. They would need to flesh out some details for us in a final site plan. That a written parking agreement be submitted for review and approval and then recorded with the county recorder of deeds, showing that the parking lot is for the benefit of the building at 1520 and that both lots remain under common ownership for the duration of the conditional use permit, and that any future improvements to the building that result in the removal of dock doors or vehicle entrances be accompanied by the removal of the curb cuts and driveway aprons and the curb and sidewalk be restored. We're hopeful that if these entrances or dock doors are removed, that we might be able to add a couple of on-street parking spaces if those curbs were restored in the future. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval to you after their meeting on Thursday evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about this. We also do have the applicant here tonight if you have any questions for them.
First reading.
I have a question.
Oh, you got a question?
Yep, it's for a retail space, that parking is not super close. So I mean, I guess I don't know. It just seemed to me that it was a little off. Like if you're an employee, it's one thing, but if you're gonna access a retail, is that gonna be satisfactory, I guess?
So the ordinance does not establish a requirement that shared parking be within a certain distance of the benefited use. So, that is one reason for the conditional use permit process is to review it. I really think that if you're coming to this location for, because you're buying something in the dispensary space, you're probably parking on the street, and they're probably encouraging their employees
Yeah.
to use this lot.
But you have to
But
technically have a.
how much parking is established by the amount of space being used for the retail use and for the office uses. That doesn't mean that the people
Okay.
using those spaces have to be the
Okay.
ones to park in it.
Gotcha.
That's just how we establish the amount.
Okay, and you've asked, and you said you're gonna ask for a copy of the agreement when they submit.
That's one
to
of the
you guys,
conditions,
right?
that
Yeah.
they provide us, that we get an opportunity to review it before it's recorded with the county.
Okay, I'm good.
2 quick things. The new zoning ordinance would give credit for on-street parking. Is that correct?
Yes,
So would
that
that
is,
render this like this lot would need to be shared parking, or would they have enough on-street
well,
along that?
they are submitting this application this month. So they are bound by the terms of our existing zoning ordinance.
Okay.
They would like, I believe that they have a time pressure to get a site plan
First
approved, and
mover.
we can't approve a site plan for this building without them showing how they're addressing the parking issue.
Second question, who else uses that lot right now? It's shared, but with who?
It's not used by anyone for parking right now.
Okay.
We call it a shared parking arrangement. Really, they're sharing it with themselves.
Okay.
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
First reading.
First reading.
An ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit to permit shared parking as a conditional use at 1520 Swift, subject to the conditions incorporated herein.
I move that bill number 7399 be placed on second and final reading and passes as number 9196.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Call
Call the roll.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Steffen?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit to permit shared parking as a conditional use at 1520 Swift, subject to the conditions incorporated herein.
You gotta remember, it's been 2 weeks. I forget. Okay, number 15.
Award of contract, Richards Park Public Art Sculpture, resolution number 19-024.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. I'll call on the Assistant City Administrator, Kim Nakahodo.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Tim C. Crummett Charitable Foundation is administered by the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. The city of North Kansas City is named as a beneficiary of that particular fund, and it benefits two different accounts, the Mackin Park Improvement Fund, as well as it was listed, a beautification fund. In June of 2018, the City Council formed the Tim C. Crummett Family Charitable Fund Projects Committee. I'll just refer to that as committee from now on, to identify beautification projects here in North Kansas City. Upon its first meeting, the committee really identified Richards Park as a place for its first large project. And that project was identified as a custom piece of public art to be designed specifically for that area. The committee issued a national call to artists, and we had a very large response. We had 83 artists reply to our call. After a very comprehensive process, it was narrowed down to 4 applicants, and from that 4 applicants, the finalist, named Sujia Chen, was chosen. There is the proposed artwork up on your screen right now. The attached public art proposal shows this particular piece. As you can see, it's a colorful piece. It's made out of aluminum that will be painted it's actually a metallic car payment so that it would resist the elements. As you see right now, the final design on the petals won't be complete. Sujia Chen, as part of her process, will be doing a public engagement process. She'll be visiting North Kansas City and talking with residents, business owners, and visitors about what North Kansas City means to them. And as part of that process, she will distill those images onto these petals. Once she is done with that process, she will submit her final design to the Tim C. Crummett Foundation Committee for final approval. Within the contract, you will see the proposed budget. It has a total budget of $85,000. $70,000 of that is for the sculpture itself. It has a contingency fund of $5,000, and then we have $10,000 for the installation, landscaping, and dedication. All of the funds, all of the projects funded out of this special fund will have some kind of identifier, either plaque, or if it's a mural, be painted right on the mural to identify to residents, businesses, and visitors who paid for these pieces of public arts. The project for this timeline, is anywhere between 26 and 28 weeks. That includes Sujia's travel here and the installation process. Our goal is to have this particular piece installed this fall and then come back in the spring for landscaping. If you guys have any questions, yes.
I have a question. As far as the $10,000, would that include the site preparation? Like, is there going to be a concrete pad or something that's going to hold the structure?
Yes.
I'm assuming that'll all be considered under the site prep?
Yes, as part of the contract, we are working with the same civil engineer for both. Since this is a large-scale public art piece, there will need to be stamped drawings from a Missouri civil engineer on both the top part and the under part. So pretty much the contract states that the artist pays for civil engineering above grade, and below grade, that's where that $10,000 comes in to make sure that we're setting an appropriate base to place that sculpture on.
Very good. Thank you.
Tom?
Now, you said aluminum and it says stainless steel. Which one is it?
Oh, I misspoke. It's steel.
So there's quite a bit of weight difference there.
Yes, yes.
And durability.
Yes. That was actually one of the things that we chatted about the artist with is she's never done a piece in Missouri, And we had, that's why the requirement for those stamp drawings are part of the contract to make sure that it holds up to our Midwest winds.
Oh, go ahead. Do we know the exact location?
It's going to be in Richards Park. Can you go?
Oh, there. Oh, okay.
Go back to the first slide. Oh, it doesn't.
Where, yeah, okay.
Sorry,
I
that
know
rendering
what you're
doesn't
talking
show
about.
it.
Okay.
It's within, there is right now kind of a brick large
Yeah.
square. It would be placed inside that.
Okay,
inside
so
that.
that'll stay.
Yes, the kind of
bricks.
half wall, the
Yeah.
brick half wall will stay, and then everything inside of that will be removed, and then a
it'll go
concrete
inside
base
of
go
that.
inside of it.
Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha. I must have missed that, sorry.
I'm excited for this project. Want to thank the committee, and I believe you're on the committee as well for working on this. And I think this really reflects the creative culture we currently have blossoming here in North Kansas City. So look forward to this. Thank you.
Blossoming, yes, very good.
Blossoming, nice.
Move to approve.
I wanted a big hornet, but they shut me down.
Still have the opportunity to get a hornet on one of those pedals.
Yeah, exactly. You can talk to her.
All right. Move to.
All in favor?
All
We
in
just
favor?
did, yeah,
Aye.
opposed.
Opposed? Oh, I thought, okay. Oh, we didn't, all right, okay. Number 16.
Yep. 16, subordinate tax increment revenue bonds, One North Hotel Project, Series 2019C, Bill number 7396, ordinance number 9193.
Eric.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to call on Matthew Webster of the, our financial advisor with the firm of George K. Baum. He'll speak to items 16, 17, and 18 on your agenda, which are all related. So.
Good evening. Matt Webster with George K. Baum, the city's financial advisor. And I'm sorry I don't have an audiovisual presentation, but I'll try nevertheless to keep this both short and interesting, and I think those two are related in this case. You'll recall that the council back in October approved the necessary documents to allow the issuance of tax increment debt and revenue debt by the IDA. Those bonds were, in fact, sold and closed on January 24 of 2019. This is a follow-on transaction that has been requested by the master developer of One North that allows for additional funding of some of the infrastructure improvements which were not funded by the original bond issue. The original bond issue was sold to a third party. They put a limit on the amount of bonds that they were able to purchase. The master developer came back and asked the city for help in approving $1 million more in principal amount of bonds. We've divided the bond issues as follows. 250,000 is related to the hotel TIF, 250,000 is related to the medical office building TIF, and 500,000 is related to the hotel tax revenue bonds. That's why there's three ordinances. But essentially, the steps you're taking tonight are the same for each of the three bond issues. So these the proceeds of these bonds will be purchased by the master developer or entities related to the master developer, and this will allow him to be repaid for some of these expenses, and then he'll own these bonds for approximately the next 20 years. The repayment of these bonds, we expect them to be repaid based on the revenue projections that we prepared for the first set of bond issues, but any risk to the repayment, if the revenues come up short or if the tax increment period expires, those risks are borne completely by the master developer and are no way related to either the city or the IDA. The memo that the city administrator prepared talks about the specific improvements, but it's infrastructure related to the Spine Road and sanitary sewer improvements. That's the actual ones. I just want to touch on, I don't want to read my whole memo, but I just want to touch on a few high points just to get this into the record. The city, I want to be clear, is not issuing these bonds, but we do need the city's support and involvement in the issuance. The bonds will be issued by the IDA. The IDA is separate from the city. It's a political subdivision under state statute, and the city has no liability for the repayment of these bonds. The city is simply agreeing to transfer the tax increment or the hotel revenue, the hotel tax revenue on an annual basis, which is why we need the agreements. I and the other members of the transaction team have a lot of experience with this type of debt. It's nothing particularly unusual. It is contemplated by the master development agreement, and you know, we don't see any problem with the structure or the city's involvement in the structure. I think the first consideration of something like this is city risk, and again, as I said, I don't see any city financial risk in a transaction of this type. If you agree to pass these ordinances out, our next stop will be at the IDA, where we will ask them to approve the issuance of the bonds, and we would expect these bonds would be completed in the month of June. These are what we call privately placed and non-rated bonds, and that is a safety measure so that the bonds don't end up in the hands of unsophisticated purchasers who don't understand them. We've reviewed the revenue assumptions and have no reason to question those. And also importantly, all the costs and expenses of the bonds, including the city's cost, will be covered out of the bond issue, so there is no cost to the city. The not to exceed amounts of the three bond issues are $205,000 for the hotel TIF. I'm sorry, $255,000 for the hotel TIF, $255,000 for the medical office building, and $505,000 for the hotel revenue bonds. But we expect the total of the three to be right at $1 million. With that, you know, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know it's a little bit esoteric, but again, it's much like the transaction we did before. Specifically, the documents we're actually asking for approval of is a supplement to the original financing agreement, which encompasses these bonds, a tax compliance agreement, which is largely a ministerial document, and then just an ordinance that sets the parameters for the bond issues, which I've already talked about. The interest rates on these bonds will all be 7%. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I have two questions, and I really would have liked to address this to the master developer. The first question is short, the second one is a little lengthy.
Master developer is here.
Yeah, okay. Councilman, the master developer is here, so I'll let him come up, and if you're addressing his questions to him, that's fine.
I'm
going to get the short one first.
Yes. Do we have a hotel named?
It's under construction.
No, I mean like.
It's we're building two hotels, an Aloft by Westin. And an Element by Westin, two Westin hotels.
Two Westins. Okay.
I hope the second question's as easy as the first.
It's a little more difficult. I appreciate you addressing my questions. And I didn't know about this. It was not last Sunday, but a week ago last Sunday. And I was watching on KCP TV on Sunday. I'm not sure if it was Kansas City Week in Review that they had on, or if it was Ruckus. They come on one right after the other. And very knowledgeable people. And during the course of the show, the knowledgeable people they have on the program, they mentioned that Kansas City has all these empty hotel rooms. They're just, and they point out, Kansas City is, they try to get more of these hotel rooms filled, maybe from conventions and such. But the fact of the matter is, when a convention comes in, Kansas City as a metropolitan area is number 40 in the nation. So when an organization decides to have a convention in Kansas City, or are they going to choose Kansas City, or are they going to choose Las Vegas? Or are they going to choose Phoenix in the winter, or Orlando in the winter, or even Miami or someplace? So it's really tough. But the result is empty space based on supply and demand. There's a lot of empty spaces in the hotel rooms. They didn't paint a pretty picture of it being a sound going for business entity going forward. And that's why I wonder why, I wish I'd known about this sooner. Why are we, what is your reply to this?
Okay, so for North Kansas City being selfish, there's sufficient demand generated for this area to support these two hotels.
Why?
Cerner alone, Cerner alone could book those two hotels and keep them 100% full 365 days a year.
Really?
And it is much more efficient. Cerner now is booking hotel rooms on the plaza, and they're shuttling people back every day from the plaza to Cerner's headquarters. So if they could be across the street, it'd be less wear and tear on their visitors, less wear and tear on their staff. So it's much more efficient just from the Cerner. Then North Kansas City Hospital, generates a tremendous number of hotel stays. So when somebody takes their mom in for open heart surgery and the husband or the child wants to stay close to mom, they're now booking further away. And I'm not anti-gambling. I help bring the casino here. But there are a lot of people that won't stay at a casino hotel. So even though the Harrah's hotel rooms are really nice, they're just a segment of the population that either their business won't let them stay at a casino hotel, their religious preferences would say, don't stay at that hotel. So, and this is a higher brand. A Westin is a higher brand. So although I can understand if you owned a budget 8 at 30th and the Paseo, maybe, that your occupancy may suffer, I think these hotels are going to do extremely well. And the studies we did show these hotels will do extremely well. And they took in all the hotels that were under construction when they did those studies. When we hired those studies, that company took into account all the hotel rooms that were being proposed.
Thank you.
Sure.
First reading.
Second.
Aye.
An ordinance approving the, I'm sorry.
We were going to do each one separately?
Yeah. An ordinance approving the issuance of subordinate tax increment revenue bonds, One North Hotel Project, Series 2019C, by the Industrial Development Authority of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, and authorizing certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
I move that bill number 7396 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9193.
Second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance approving the issuance of subordinate tax increment revenue bonds, One North Hotel Project, Series 2019C, by the Industrial Development Authority of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, and authorizing certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
Okay, number 17.
Subordinate tax increment revenue bonds, One North Medical Office Building Project, Series 2019D, Bill number 7397, ordinance number 9194.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance approving the issuance of subordinate tax increment revenue bonds, One North MOB Project, Series 2019D, by the Industrial Development Authority of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, and authorizing certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
I move that bill number 7397 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9194.
Second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance approving the issuance of subordinate tax increment revenue bonds, One North MOB Project, Series 2019D, by the Industrial Development Authority of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, and authorizing certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
We have a motion.
No, we're on number 18.
Number 18.
Oh, 18. Oh, all right.
Subordinate Hotel Tax Revenue Bonds, Series 2019E, Bill number 7398, ordinance number 9195.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance approving the issuance of subordinate hotel tax revenue bonds, One North Hotel Project, Series 2019E, by the Industrial Development Authority of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, and authorizing certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
I move that bill number 7398 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9195.
Second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance approving the issuance of subordinate hotel tax revenue bonds, One North Hotel Project, Series 2019E, by the Industrial Development Authority of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, and authorizing certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
Number 19.
Contract for landscape maintenance services at One North, resolution number 19-025.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. I'll call on the Public Works Director, Pat Hopper.
Thank you. Last fall, landscape improvements within the city's right-of-way in the One North development area were completed. The landscaping includes irrigation systems, new grass, ornamental trees, and various types of shrubbery. In a few years, the North Kansas City Destination Developers Community Improvement District will take over the responsibility and cost for landscape maintenance. But for now, maintenance of the new landscaping, which extends approximately 3/4 of a mile from Highway 210 to 16th Avenue, is the obligation of the city. Request for proposals for landscape services for the period beginning Monday, May 13th and ending October 31st was distributed to several qualified landscape companies. Among the required maintenance items are mowing, trimming, and sweeping grass, maintaining irrigation system, periodic applications of chemicals, including herbicide and pesticide, and weed control products, and manual weed removal. Following a review of the bids, the submittal by CMJ Lawn and Landscaping in the amount of $14,000 was determined to be the lowest and best bid. A resolution approving contract with CMJ Lawn and Landscaping is for your consideration tonight.
Who's doing this work now?
Well, that's a good question. I thought someone might ask that. A little bit, we started out going for quotes, and I had no idea that the project would cost over $25,000. We had 3 quotes come in, and the lowest was $32,000, so I had to start over and do the formal bidding process. It exceeded $25,000. And so we are using Commercial Lawn Care, who we have a contract with for mowing. His company also does these landscaping improvements as well. So it's starting the end of March, pre-emergence were applied and mowing began and fertilization. So it's been well cared for. But he was a bidder, but he wasn't the lowest and best bidder.
All right, and then also, when this contract ends in 2021? Is that right?
No, this is just a 1 year.
Just a 1 year from.
It's like 5.5 months, right?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, there's options to extend. And then, at what point do we anticipate the CID taking this over?
When majority of the property is turned over to private parties.
Okay.
Right now, we're the main owner still.
Thank you.
So So the memo notes like the disparity between the bids, 14,024 and then, one way out there. The question I had is, I did a little math on the amount, so I'm assuming mowing is the biggest expense here versus, some maintenance on sprinklers and whatnot. We're looking at 180 hours of mowing versus 500 hours versus 1,000 hours of mowing between the different contracts. Like that, I don't know how much it takes to mow, but 8 hours a week on one seems a little low versus 23 on the next. Do we have any idea how long it's going to take them to mow that?
No, in fact, I kind of learned a lot throughout this, but after we looked at the bids, I contacted CMJ and questioned them about everything.
Right.
And that they're sticking with their bid, and so we're going to go with it.
So that, I know it says here that you asked Harris too, and they had good things to say about them.
Yes.
But do you feel comfortable that, like, with this, they're the highest mowing rate with the lowest number, that they're going to be able to get it done in the, with what they are budgeting?
They bid it that way.
They're contractually bound,
All right.
assuming you approve the contract.
Sure.
Now, I will add one thing. They've got a lot of clients, and they have a lot of chemicals and a lot of big trucks, and that's very profitable for them.
Okay. One more on this. Not on the sprinkler or the herbicide treatment, but on the mowing. Is that not something we could keep in-house and have the city do? Do we not have the?
No, I don't think that the city has enough staff and resources to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 20.
Amendment to City Code at Title 15, Buildings and Construction, Chapter 15.8 and Chapter 15.30. Bill number 7384, ordinance number 9181.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. I'll call on the building official, David Harris.
Good evening, council. On March 5th, the city council approved updating the building and construction codes. As part of that approval, the International Fire Code was amended in section 903, which included automatic sprinkler system changes. Also in the International Building Code and the International Existing Code, those codes also has sections that deal with automatic sprinkler systems. So to make sure that all of the codes are consistent with the amended fire code, staff is recommending to approve this to make the consistency throughout to the International Building Code and the existing fire code, and the existing building code.
So are we removing our reference to this code, and the default is the international code, or how are we doing this?
So the International Fire Code has section 903 that talks about automatic sprinkler systems. If you turn to the International Building Code 903, it has the exact same language, but in your previous approval, it didn't include changing the International Building Code 903. So both would be the same. We're not taking anything out. We're amending the International Building Code and the existing code to be the same as the fire code.
I understand.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance amending ordinance number 9176 in Chapter 15.08 International Building Code and Chapter 15.30 International Existing Building Code of Title 15 Buildings and Construction of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
I move that bill number 7384 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9181.
Second.
Call roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce? Yes. Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Steffen?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 9176 in Chapter 15.08 International Building Code and Chapter 15.30 International Existing Building Code of Title 15 Buildings and Construction of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
21.
Approving accounts due and payable by the city through May 3rd, 2019. Bill number 7400, ordinance number 9197.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through May 3rd, 2019.
I move that bill number 7400 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9197.
Second.
Call a roll.
Councilmember DeLong.
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman.
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Steffen.
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through May 3rd, 2019.
Thank you, sir. I'll call on the Assistant City Administrator, Kim Nakahota.
Good evening. Just to let you know that the Planning Commission will be hosting a Communities for All Ages work session tomorrow, Wednesday, May 8th, 6 p.m. at the Parks and Recreation Center. This workshop will be focusing on Section 2 of that work plan, housing and commercial development.
That's at Parks and Rec tomorrow?
Yes, that's at the Parks and Recreation Center, 6 p.m. tomorrow night.
Thank you, Kim. And a few items from me. First of all, the upcoming city items of note report is in your packet, as well as the YMCA monthly financial report for the month of March. Also in your packet is our proposed budget calendar for consideration of your fiscal year 2020 budget. We are just gearing up the budget process. Typically, we would transmit it to the council in mid to late August, and then we would have work sessions in early September. So I've proposed some dates. Wednesday, September 4th, which is a traditional date. It's the day after a regular council meeting. And then typically we would do the next meeting about 6 days later, but because of the Missouri Municipal League Conference, which normally at least a few council members attend, as well as myself and other staff, we're proposing Wednesday, September 11th. And then we usually will at least tentatively plan a third budget work session, which typically is not held. Usually you've managed to reach your decisions by the end of the second work session, but just in case, we would schedule one on Thursday, September 12th if needed, and then aim for adoption on Tuesday, September 17th. Does that work for everybody?
So that would not conflict with the MML then coming on that Wednesday?
Well, MML ends on that Wednesday, so come back, rest for a little bit, and then come to an exciting budget work session.
Or just stay at City Hall all day? No, yeah. Okay.
You could always do that. We can set up a cot for you in the back room.
4th, 11th, 18th,
4th, 11th, and 12th.
and 12th, okay.
So we'll plan on that.
But the 12th is
That's
as
right.
needed, I
Yeah,
guess.
if
Okay.
needed. Yes, ma'am.
Eric,
Yes, ma'am.
I cannot do Wednesdays. I'm sorry, I'm committed to teaching Wednesdays. I mean, you can go ahead without me, but I'm slated on Wednesdays.
Okay. But,
I'm not saying change everything around it, I'm just giving you information.
all right. Well, we can take another look. I hate to have any council member not make those budget work sessions.
Is there a way I could get the information?
Oh,
and
sure.
weigh
I
in?
mean,
And
we
then
would-
I don't want to switch everybody's schedule around my commitment to Wednesday night. So I'm happy to review the information and input prior to, and then move forward with
Sure.
Wednesdays.
So the way we do it, you would have the budget document. We
That's
would
fine.
have provided that to you a couple of weeks before. And then typically all the staff is here, and we kind of go through the budget once around through the capital budget. Typically, we kind of go through all the capital projects, answer council questions, and then the next one would focus on operating. Of course, those meetings are televised, so you could always
Right, I can always watch
watch them later. We can take another look at the calendar and maybe aim for a Thursday or something.
As I said, you don't
Okay.
need to work around my schedule. I'd be happy to review documents, watch it televised, and input as need
Well, I'm
be.
sorry that conflicts with your schedule.
That's okay.
All right.
Could you do an off
Thank-
Tuesday, the Tuesdays that we're not on city council?
Well, again,
Oh, that's the MML.
you know, the Tuesday, September 3rd is the date of a regular meeting. Tuesday, September 10th is
We'll be in
the MML in St. Charles. That's the problem with that.
Okay, yeah.
Do we normally meet at 6?
Yes, ma'am.
Food's at 5.
Food's at 5.
We usually have a light dinner prepared before that for your sustenance.
Busy that part.
It's not busy for dinner.
No, I teach at 5:30.
All right, well, thank you. So a couple other things. We had a couple of events this weekend. In the morning, we had our annual shredding event. This year, we had 83 participants who shredded 2,000 to 2,500 pounds of paper. We got good feedback from the participants that they appreciated the event. And then in the afternoon, we had our annual vaccination event. And we served 69 people, 69 animals were vaccinated, along with, no, never mind.
I didn't know you offered a 2-for-1 special.
And lastly, was looking for some input from you. I hope you've had a chance to look at your calendars maybe for the month of May, but looking to see if we can't find time when at least most of you might be able to take a tour of our water plant, something we talked about doing. So if I could maybe kind of go around the table and ask you what days you might be available for a tour for the remainder of this month. Mr. Barr?
Mornings and evenings?
It's in the evening. We would plan it around 5 o'clock.
And starting what day?
Well,
I mean, like, you want to start?
Like next week?
Next week?
Yes, ma'am, starting, the weeks of the 13th, 20th, or
Monday or Tuesday for me then.
Monday or Tuesday, either, okay.
I could do Monday the 13th, maybe, or.
I'm good on the 13th. 13th.
I could do the 13th.
Is that one of your days?
I'm actually,
We're on Rita time here.
no,
Right,
we're not.
Councilmember Pierce had indicated the 14th, 16th, and 20th.
I could do the 16th, too.
14th.
I can't do the 14th,
I can do the 16th.
but I've been in it before, so don't change it on me.
You cannot do the 16th?
No, the wife hasn't been on the calendar, so.
If you guys want to do it,
Actually, if everyone else can do the 16th.
I've been in
I have a
there,
babysitter.
I've seen
I
it,
do the
so.
16th. I forgot my life has changed recently.
You can
So,
have a babysitter.
am I hearing maybe the 16th?
Yes.
16th.
That's for
I
me.
could do the
Good.
16th.
All right, we will aim for the 16th.
Which is on what day?
That is a
Thursday.
Thursday, so it sounds like you're not available, Mr. Farr, but I've got 3 members who have indicated that they can be there that day. So, of course, well, if you can free up your schedules, but if it's okay, we'll aim for that. It is hard to get all you
It
folks
Yeah,
together.
we know.
If you guys need the 14th, I mean, I can't, but if everybody else can, they can do the 14th, too. I don't want Tom to miss it.
5 p.m.
14th is iffy.
So is the 14th better for anybody? No?
Okay.
I am aiming for the 16th. All right, that's all staff has, thank you.
Okay, you done?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. Brian?
I'll start with my complaint. 23rd Street, it's been a disaster here this last week. It's like boulders in the road from the construction. And since it's just been left out there, it's now dragging to every other street in that area. So it is. And the rain didn't help either, so I don't know if the street sweeper will work anymore. Someone might be out there, Jay done with a shovel or whoever's working over there. That'll be,
All right, sir, we'll try to address that.
it's been quite the mess here this last week.
We did have our building inspector spoke with the contractor at the high school today and about getting that cleaned up, so they should be on it.
Perfect, thank you. Also, I was going to ask for an update on the calls to walls. I saw you did we've selected a wall, and where are we?
So the committee has selected the wall. It's on the Brookery, and the call to artists went out yesterday.
Perfect.
So the call to artists will be open until May 31st, and then the committee will select their their final artists along with the wall, and we'll begin the contracting with the hope to be painting in July.
Was that a national call, or we're keeping this regional here?
That's a local.
Local call.
That's a local. I
I
mean,
didn't
if a
know. I
national
wouldn't-
person wants to apply, we're more than
I
happy
wouldn't-
to
yeah.
consider.
That's not my space, so I wouldn't. Thank you. We're getting to the more positive side here. Got to start with the negative workup. It's also Small Business Week, which in North Kansas City means we have a lot of small businesses. We have what Rich would say, 900 businesses, and the majority of those would be small businesses. So definitely. And some facts about that is that small business does create 2 out of 3 jobs each year, and more than half of Americans either own or work in a small business. And we have plenty of those, so if it's a retail establishment, patronize those. And that will roll into my next one, National Bike Month. You can also ride your bike to those establishments. So, and I think our bike initiatives recently have made us a regional leader in bikeability. And there's a lot of positives to that. Improve health, well-being, quality of life, economy, improve traffic safety, amongst many others. So you can commingle those 2 events and ride and visit your small businesses. I'm done.
I have 2 items. One, in regard to the vaccinations on Saturday. I did receive a letter from one of the people who had a small dog there, and her mother had a small dog there, and a large dog bit both of these dogs. So she has asked that we consider maybe some parameters around the vaccinating the pets, maybe like my suggestion would be from such and such a pound to another pound at one time, or in lieu of that, if a dog X out, that dog and owner be asked to leave and they don't get their dog vaccinated. But it's something we can consider for next year, and I think we can easily remedy this situation by talking amongst ourselves. So I did tell her I would bring it up at the council meeting. It's amazing to me when I bring my dog there, how well pretty much all these dogs and cats get along amazingly well together, but there's always going to be something, and 2 dogs were bit. She was not looking for compensation, she just was expressing a concern, and I told her we could probably consider something.
And we are looking at, we regret that that occurred, and we are looking at what measures we could take next year to prevent that.
And she, as she said to you, Eric, and I think it needs to be stated out loud, she was very pleased with Eric's quick response on this, and she so noted that we both paid a lot of attention to her, and we have one very happy citizen as a result of a rather difficult situation. And then I have a question that occurred to me. We had discussed, and I thought we budgeted for some picnic kinds of tables and things for the homeless, where they're a little bit more out of sight. I'm sorry, I was really busy today, and I didn't have a chance to go back through my notes. Where are we at on that? Because that would be really nice if we move forward.
We're still working with the Missouri Department of Transportation to get that property right transferred to us to allow for that.
Okay.
So as
They had been agreeable at first, are they?
they're not disagreeable, it's just,
They want more details, and so we're getting quotes on the shade structures, and we can provide them with, they want sizes and distances from the curb, and so we need more details on the shade structures, so we can provide that, so we're working on getting that together so we can give that to MoDOT.
I do not envy you your job. Thank you for answering my question.
2 quick things from me. Kim, thank you so much for the work you're doing with the arts around here. Very exciting to see the sculpture going in here, and then the calls for walls and the art. I mean, it's great what's going on. It's long needed, and we appreciate it. Second thing, kind of what Bryant was leading with Small Business Week, we have second Saturdays in North Kansas City coming up. That'll be the 11th. So go out and check out what specials are being offered around at the local businesses.
I have no comments tonight. No.
I'll make up for her comment.
Okay, great.
No, just a couple. One quick question. I had a resident ask me, and I don't know, I haven't been over there. The dog park, I know it's been closed for work and sodding, and do we know when the dog park's gonna open? I can know we got a parks expert here. Do we have a date on that, Liz, or Eric, or anybody that knows?
I use the dog park, and my dog uses the dog park.
They let 'em go out.
And they did have it closed during the real wet, cold, all the grass was dead and everything else, so they had it closed. they did a real good job of planting grass, and they got the grass to growing and everything working well. They opened it back up, and then it rained some
Started
more.
raining like that, the
So
dogs.
now when it's wet, they're gonna close it down
Okay.
and then open it back up when it dries up a little bit.
Nice out, take your dog out when it's really rainy. then
Yeah,
leave it
and,
alone. Okay.
you know, they're trying to get the grass up to where it will maintain itself and everything, so.
I'm not knocking it being closed. I just had somebody ask me and I wanted to give them the right information. Needed to be done.
One thing I might say, I think they need to sign it a little better to kind of explain why it's closed, but I think they're working on that too, so.
They do good work, so just had a resident ask, and I wanted to give them the right information, and I knew it was closed for that reason, so. Just a couple other quick things, I'll make it quick. Saw on the news a couple of times in the past couple of weeks, a couple of North Kansas City businesses have been featured. I know Don's daughter Shelley and Neil's business, paper company, was on the news, and also the people that doing the VR over here next to Jefferson's were on there. So it's really cool to see some North Kansas City businesses getting some media attention. Also, it looks like we've got speaking of the parks employee, Cynthia Garcia is going to be retiring, so I wanted to thank her for all her years of service to the parks and recreation. Wanted to thank, looks like, I don't know if we've had some complaints, chief, or what have you, but you've got a speedometer over there on kind of checking or not the speedometer, it's on 21st and Macon. What do you call those things? That check the speed?
Radar detector?
Radar detector.
A speed awareness sign.
Speed
It's
awareness
a radar indicator. And yes, there was a complaint from that area, and so we placed it there. It's probably going to get moved fairly soon
Yeah, I know
to
they're
another
mobile.
area. But that's what it is. And as much as anything, it just helps wake up drivers to pay a little closer attention to how fast they're going.
And so it works most of the time. I mean, when we drive by, it shows the speed. And when I'm walking by or running by, it doesn't register. So maybe I'm not running fast.
It only activates at 23 miles an hour, so you need to pick up the pace.
All right.
Just at 4.
The only other final question I had, and I'm assuming that we're probably not going to be able to do any, I know on the archway, the arch sign here with the lights, did we ever get a response back from the engineer or anything?
They're supposed to be providing us with a bid to do a mock-up of the lighting changes, and I haven't gotten it
Okay,
from them.
so it's still-
And I keep
Still in
forgetting to
progress,
ask
still in
about it.
process. Okay, cool. That's it.
Well, I had to do some thinking to come up with something tonight. I'll just mention that May 18th is a citywide garage sale. A lot of people are interested in that.
I might say, you know, all of us council people got a note from Rich Groves that reminding us that we've got 900, you know, small businesses or big businesses here in Northtown. And he recommended that each one of the council members try to go visit some of these businesses. And I think it's a great idea. And I'd be happy to go along. That's all I got. Okay, moving on, 25.
Consideration of a request to hold and recess into an executive session is requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute, Section 610.0212.
So moved. Second.
Call roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yep.
Councilmember Pearman? Yes. Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Steffen?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
26, consideration of a request to hold and recess into an executive session as requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute, Section 610.0212.
So moved.
Call roll.
Second.
Oh, okay, call roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman? Yes. Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes.
Councilmember Steffen?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
One more. Consideration of a request to hold and recess into an executive session as requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statutes, Section 610.0212.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm done.
No, some of them are long.